We are live on the first ever P&B Betting College Football Episode 1. We're here with Mr. Paisley. Jared, great to be back in the action.
Great to be back in the studio, Case. Long time off, refresh the batteries a little bit, and temperature's getting a little bit cooler outside. It's football season, and best time of the year coming up here.
It is fall. It's crazy. We're excited. First time since April, college basketball wrapped up, and hopefully we'll be doing this once a week for the next 4 or 5 months until the season's over. So very exciting stuff. So what we're kind of going to do in this initial episode is just go over some off-season rule changes that were made. Most people, I'm sure, kind of know about them, but just to refresh everyone's mind, and then honestly just refresh our minds too as we get into the season. Then Jared and I will go over some of the conferences, all the new Power 4 for the season. We'll kind of just go through them quickly, pick a champion, some of the surprising teams, some of the disappointing teams, and just some other maybe bold takes or some possible predictions there. And then we'll just wrap up kind of going over the college football playoff format and close out with some bets. So let's see, the 2 major changes this year. One of them, thanks to Michigan, is the new college football headset rule, which the NFL does. College is implementing it for the first time. That's just, we'll have microphones. I don't know, Jared. I'm kind of mixed on it. I mean, what made college football so cool is, you didn't have like the high technology of the NFL and you had to use signs, but clearly thanks to Michigan, we can't do that in other teams anymore. But no, I do think it's a good thing. I think it was kind of long past due. But I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see really any notable differences during the season, other than maybe like delay a game. I don't know, like some weird things might go on. Just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm going to miss the cardboard signs with the random pictures and everything. It's going to be disappointing, but I agree. I think it'll be good. I mean, I think the big difference between some college teams and NFL is the pace of play they play. Some of these teams go so fast. Like, are they even going to use the headsets, or our defense is going to be allowed to get set up while they're trying to get a signal in from their D coordinator because the offense moving so quick? So will be an interesting thing to do. But yes, the Connor Stallions rule effectively in place for this year.
Very, very disappointing there. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't think there'll be much major changes. It might be honestly weird for the players too, coming out of high school, senior in high school, going from just like that type of football to all of a sudden you're wearing headsets and getting used to that. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting to watch, but not really major. Second one, I guess a little bit different. Now we have the 2-minute warning in the NFL, or like the NFL in college. I don't really think it's going to make much of a difference. I guess it's mainly for broadcasting and commercials. Might slow the game down a little bit, but I don't know. Not really too major of a change either there.
Yeah, I've been noticing in my college football video game a lot. That's the only reminder I got with the 2-minute warning at the end of the second and fourth. So sometimes it is nice, but I think it'll be a nice little, kind of working towards that 2-minute warning, take a timeout or let it run right until there. So I kind of like that change, honestly.
I think it is good. It kind of breaks it up. And I did hear an interesting point of view that the reason it was implemented is because if you remember last year, they implemented that new rule where when you get a first down, the clock only stops when you're outside of 2 minutes. And now under 2 minutes, the clock is supposed to stop, when they change it. So that 2-minute warning, I guess, gives it like a black-white cutoff on when that is implemented. So I guess that makes sense. I just hope it's not more commercials, but they claim it's not. So we'll see if that's the case. So that was a quick couple changes in the rules. Now for the interesting stuff, the conference previews. I guess we could just start with the SEC. We'll kind of go from biggest conference and most powerful to the Big 12 or to the Big 10, and maybe finish up with the ACC Big 12. What are you thinking in the SEC, Mr. Paisley?
Yeah, I think it is going to be the best conference. Now you add Texas and Oklahoma, 2 really good programs. It's deep, as it always is. A lot of teams at the top that are going to be competing for that one spot, but you got to start with Georgia. I think they're the best team in the country overall. Got a little revenge from last year, missing out on the college football playoff, which a lot of people forget, the 14 playoff, but now expands to 12. But yeah, a lot of good teams. We'll get into a couple of them, but I think Georgia's still a top dog, and people still got to go through them. But really cool to see Texas and Oklahoma and they get right into it with a deep SEC schedule. So we'll be seeing them. A couple people play, or Texas, Oklahoma playing at LSU, at Georgia. Georgia's coming to Texas, so it'll be some cool atmospheres, really cool games. But I think by far the best conference in college football this year.
Yeah, I think it is too. I mean, Georgia, unstoppable. I mean, I think they're clearly going to be the number one. I do expect them not to have many roadblocks this year. I think they'll be in the SEC Championship. Obviously, anything could happen in that game. Like you said, with last year, what happened to them, they looked like the best team all year, ended up missing the playoff, which is, kind of crazy because I think they definitely were one of the best 4 teams. But I'm there with Georgia. I think kind of everybody's in agreement there. I am higher on Alabama this year than most people. Obviously, losing a guy like Nick Saban, you never know what to expect in the program, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of the experts and a lot of like the national, kind of profile media is kind of down on Alabama. Not saying they're going to go like 8-4, 7-5, but you got to think even like 9-3 is kind of down for Alabama. I really don't know. I think they're going to get to 10, 11 games this year. And that is my prediction. I think it's going to be, a Georgia, Alabama SEC championship, kind of something that we've seen the last 5+ years, but I don't know. I think Texas is going to struggle a little bit entering the SEC and kind of get a rude awakening there.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on the Alabama take. For years, they've been so dominant, so everyone looks to fade them or a reason to, not back them because it's just you want to take zig while everyone else is zagging. But I do like Alabama this year, honestly. I think Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach. They lost a good amount, but not as much as people thought with the loss of Nick Saban. So they were able to retain some nice players. They did really well in the transfer portal. He brought in some guys from Washington. So I do like Jay Milroe. I think he'll get better. I didn't think he had a great year last year. I think he'll be a little more committed. This offense sets up a little bit better for him. Throw the deep ball a little bit or just run. It's not really a complex system they run there. So I think he could have a big year. And to piggyback off the Georgia point, too, they actually will play Alabama this year. So Georgia's schedule is not as easy as it has been the last couple of years. So that's also a reason why I think their record might be a little bit down towards the not middle of the pack, but it won't be as dominant run as they are because they have to play teams like Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss on the schedule. So I think they'll get a little more tested this year. And then just another little sleeper team I'm kind of higher on than most is Kentucky. I think they're obviously known for a basketball school. That hasn't been the case recently with the basketball program, but I think the football team is really building up something nice. They've been pretty consistent. I like Stoops as the head coach. I think he's doing a good job there. They pump in a lot of money to the program. They actually got a transfer quarterback from Georgia who was waiting in the wings for a while, but just couldn't get on the field. Vandergriff, I think his last name is. So high recruit. So he's looking to, get some playing time and play there. I think their defense is very underrated. They have a lot of high-end guys, both in the secondary, D-line. So Kentucky's a team to keep your eye on. I think they're starting to come into form if this quarterback transfer could hit. You got some nice pieces on the outside. They run the ball well. So I think Kentucky could be a team to keep your eye on.
Yeah, no, Kentucky will be interesting to watch. I'm looking now too at the ESPN, their SEC breakdown, the FPI. Looks like they're projected at 6-6. I don't know. My thing with Kentucky is it's just such a tough conference. Like, are they better than Florida? Are they better than South Carolina? I think they probably are, just slightly. But like I feel like those are, some toss-up games, and if you lose those games, the season could get pretty ugly quickly. Just because it's tough, but it'll be interesting. I mean, you made the point about the quarterback. I don't know. We'll see. Another interesting team in the SEC is Ole Miss. It seems everybody's kind of on the Lane Kiffin train this year, and expectations are very high. You're coming off of a good season. I mean, they beat Penn State pretty badly to win a New Year's Six game last year, and I don't know. It seems like it's kind of playoff or bust right now for Ole Miss, and I think this is kind of the first time that the expectations have been that high in a long time. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I think the expectations are always there with some of these teams as we'll get down the list, but Ole Miss seems like one of those teams. The expectations are always there. They get good recruiting class. I think they had the best transfer portal class the last 2 seasons. So the talent's there. I mean, you look at some of their games. They had a good season last year, but I just remember that Georgia game. They got wiped. They lost by 30. So it's like, can you compete with the elite of elites if you want to be a top 10? I think they're number 5 in the preseason poll or 6. So a lot of hype going into it, but can they close that gap with some of these elite teams? They struggle with Bama the last couple of years. I mean, everybody has, but yeah, I'd kind of class Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Mizzou, honestly, Missouri, and like that middle tier. Maybe they could break out, but I'm with you. It's a deep conference, so it's going to be tough. And I'd throw Texas A&M in there too. I think they're all in that group where they have the talent to compete, but can they take that next step and become one of the top 2 teams in the SEC?
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to watch there. It's going to be a lot of good games all year. I guess we'll go into our disappointing teams in the SEC in such a loaded conference, and the team that I'm going to say is, I don't want to say it's a bad team. I think they're very good. I think they could win probably the ACC and the Big 12 with no problem. But I just think the expectations are a little too high for Texas right now. Coming into a new conference, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch. You know, they haven't had to play Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee, and I mean they've played Oklahoma. They take them with them, but I feel like in Texas it's playoff or bust, and you know not everybody's going to get in. I mean the SEC, like we just said, already has Alabama. They have Georgia. Ole Miss is right there, so there are going to be teams that get left out, and that's where it gets interesting. Which one's going to get left out? I mean, you even like you just said, we have Tennessee and Missouri and other really good teams, and if Texas stumbles anywhere, that could become an issue. And they do go on the road at Michigan early in the year. And it seems like a lot of people are just assuming Texas wins that game, no problem. I mean, Michigan is, down. There's no doubt about it. They lost a lot of guys. They lost their coach. But I don't know. I just think the expectations are too high. And even like 10-2 might, some people might be a little disappointed. And 9-3, they might miss the playoff altogether. So I don't know. It's not that I think they're a bad team. I just think it's a very tough conference, and they have a pretty difficult schedule, and people are forgetting about that Michigan game.
Right. No, and I think one thing just kind of blanket over all these teams is kind of like we're judging them basing off the market perception or what people are saying or where they're ranked in the media. So, right, if we're saying Texas is going to be good, and I agree with you too, but it's not that they're going to be 6-6 and maybe not make a bowl game, but it's to the level of the betting market, how they're priced and everything like that. So, but no, I agree with you. I think Texas, that fan base, the the culture down there, they got a little taste of the playoff, and I think they're going to be expecting that, a top 4 finish. I would even go a step further and say I think it's going to be top 4 or bust for them. I think their expectations are really high. I think it's not even just getting to the playoff, but making some noise and maybe getting to a championship game. But I think last year's team was better. I think they just lost too much this year. I do like Quinn Ewers. I think he's solid, but he had some great pieces around him, some guys that got drafted very high in the NFL draft. So they lost their 2 big guys on the D line that you couldn't run on Texas last year, so you only had one option to beat them. So now you can maybe run them a little bit, which could be key for Michigan in that game, but we'll touch on that once we get to that later on in the year. But no, I'm with you. I think Texas lost too much. If they had last year's team going into the SEC, I'd be more comfortable, but I think Quinn Ewers is going to have to carry a little bit more, which I'm not sure if he could. I think the defense takes a step back. The secondary is still not that great. So now you're going to be facing some better quarterbacks in the SEC. So I'm with you. I wouldn't be shocked if they missed the playoff. I've been seeing some professional money on them to miss the playoff. You get it at some plus money, I think. So wouldn't be if you want to dabble in it a little bit, but I'm with you there.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian too. I mean, the pressure will certainly be on after having a heck of a season last year, and now the expectations are just so high. Did you go through, and who was your disappointing team in the SEC?
Yeah, my disappointing team is LSU. And again, I think based on where they're at in the market, I think they're also ranked in the top 10 or top 12 very high. I think this could be a very bad year for LSU. I think they overachieved last year with Jaden Daniels with the 2 first-round picks, a receiver. That offense was loaded. And, Brian Kelly did a great job in the OC. Mike Denbrock, who is now with Notre Dame, he's gone. So now it's going to be more on Kelly, a new OC, and a new quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels was the best player last year in college football. So when you lose that, and I don't think their defense got any better, it might even got a touch worse. And that defense gave up 40-plus points in a lot of games. So I think they went 9-3 last year. I'm not sure what they did in the bowl game, but I think their win total set at 9 or 10. Like, I don't see them being as good as last year or eclipsing that win total. So I'm a big sell on LSU. I think they'll show up pretty good in this first game against USC, Sunday night standalone game. So just if they blow the doors off USC, I wouldn't get fooled by that. Mm-hmm. I think this defense is a major problem. I think Kelly's a little over his skis. And I think this could be a very bad year, maybe seven wins, or just fighting over that 6-win mark. But I'm selling LSU big time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm seeing here too their ESPN FPI playoff percentage is 25%, and like 1-4. I mean, that's pretty good odds, but
Right.
I don't know how they're that high because you have Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Missouri. I mean, A&M is going to be in Ole Miss. That conference is just kind of loaded from at least that first half. And LSU, not a bottom tier SEC team, but there's only going to be 4 teams that get in max from the SEC. I mean, you're not getting more than 4. It's just not going to happen the way that these standings are. I mean, maybe a weird, miraculous year they can squeeze 5 in, but yeah, just for LSU to stay up there in the top 3, 4 in the conference with that schedule is going to be really tough. So I'm with you there. I guess next we could just go right into the Big Ten. Obviously, similar to the SEC, it's very, very top heavy. Towards the bottom, gets a little shaky for sure. I think it's kind of clear that the 2 best teams are going to be Ohio State and Oregon, and I think that's kind of an agreement with most people. The interesting parts is who is better, who wins that game. They do play each other in the regular season. And then obviously you have now Washington and USC, Oregon and UCLA coming over to the Big Ten. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Big Ten, Mr. Paisley?
Yeah, overall big picture, I think you hit it on the head. Ohio State, Oregon are definitely 1 and 2. And then I think there's a decent amount of gap. I think we're kind of looking for that 3rd team. I think a lot of people are saying Penn State and then maybe Michigan. So, but I think the middle of the Big Ten got a little bit better. I think they raised their floor, but I think the bottom end got a little worse with some teams like UCLA, Michigan State's kind of starting over.
Northwestern, Purdue
is a mess playing on Lake. So it's like Purdue is also, Minnesota is also downtrending. But then we'll talk about a couple teams, but I think some of these middle pack, like teams that were not good the last couple of years, you kind of have to change your perception on them. I think Rutgers is a team we talked about, Indiana. Some of these teams that you don't really think are really good teams, but they've been building some good programs or got some good coaching staffs in there. But yeah, I think at the top, I think that Ohio State at Oregon game, I think week 3 is going to be monumental. It's going to be big. I kind of like Oregon in that spot, but then if they
Oregon, right?
In Oregon, yep. And then if they replay in the Big Ten Championship, might go back on Ohio State, see how they're shaking out. But I'm a lot higher on Oregon than a lot of people. I think they should be number 2. I think they're right there with Georgia. I think they should be over Ohio State, but I think there's a ton of love for Ohio State. And again, to that level of love, I don't see it, but I still think they're going to be a 1-loss team or, a very elite team. But I still have a couple question marks with Ohio State with the quarterback. They still don't have an elite quarterback like they used to in the past. The receivers are down a little bit. Question Ryan Day, but I do like the hire of Chip Kelly on the offensive side. Defense should be probably the best in the country, but I do have a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I do think they're loaded. I mean, from top to bottom. And obviously, as a Penn State fan, I've seen it year in and year out. And it just seems like no matter what, they have talent all over the field. And you're right, though, about the quarterback. I mean, he's certainly not a Justin Fields or CJ Stroud or, how Haskins was in college or even like Braxton Miller and, Terrell Pryor, like going back, like they seem to always have the quarterback figured out. And these last 2 years do seem to be a little shaky. I mean, we saw what they did to McCord and now, with Will Howard coming in. So I do agree. I think there is some possible questions. I just think from a talent level that, they're the best team. I think Oregon, you could almost coin flip it. I mean, I do think Oregon has a good shot at beating them at home. I think they actually might. They're probably the favorite in that game by a point or two.
Yeah, slightly now. I think there's 1-point favorites right now.
Yeah, so I do think, clear-cut best teams. I absolutely hate Ryan Day, though, so I really hope they fail and lose games, but probably won't happen. But it'll be interesting. I do think that Oregon game will be huge on the calendar. And they do go to Penn State. I mean, that'll be interesting, but I just don't see them. No matter what, it's just not going to happen for Penn State in that game. So this is my take.
No faith in Penn State.
No, they just can't beat Ohio State. It's just the way it is. Something.
Yeah, I mean, they had some good chances in the past, but I do think Penn State. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of them, as I'm a Notre Dame fan, as a lot of people know, but I think they should have a solid year this year. I mean, their schedule sets up nicely. I think they have a lot of manageable schedule. They avoid Oregon. They avoid Michigan this year, which they normally play in the past. They just have Ohio State. Tough one against West Virginia on the road, but still a 10-point favorite. So I think they'll be in a lot in those games. Like they play USC.
Yeah.
They should be favorites, but it's not comfortable games. But I think there's a case that Penn State, if they just lose to Ohio State, could easily go 11-1. And, I think 11-1 in the Big Ten is easily a shoo-in for the playoffs. So
yeah, for sure.
Are you thinking playoff or bust for Penn State as well? Or do you think if they miss out?
I mean, I think it's definitely playoff or bust for them. There's no doubt. I mean, if they don't make it in the 12-team era with Franklin and the way things have been going with 10 wins and 11 wins and 9 wins, it's playoff or bust. I think it's 10-2 or bust at least. I mean, you could argue 11-1, but if they slip up, at West Virginia, there's no more room for margin for error. If they slip up at USC, I think it's kind of the same thing. Like you got to win 10 games. Some will probably say you have to win 11. Whatever you get to in the playoff, I think that's where they're at for sure. Another weird team too, like we kind of touched upon it, was USC. They're an interesting team this year. I mean, obviously you lose Caleb Williams, but it seems like their defense should be a little bit better. I mean, it couldn't really get worse, I guess, from last year, but it will be an interesting team to watch. Everything I see has them either going 6-6, 7-5, or even up to 11-1. So somewhere in between 6 and 11 games. Very hard team to predict. I have them in my surprise category. I think too many people are low on them, and that's kind of like the opposite I did with Texas and the SEC, where I think there's going to be some disappointment with Texas. I think people are going to be surprised with USC. I think if they go 9-3, I think people are going to be like, oh, wow, this team was actually pretty good. Not many people have them even on the playoff radar with the 12-team playoff. I don't know. I think they're a strange team. If they beat Penn State, at home, I mean, they're right there with 9-3. I mean, maybe even 10-2, and that changes the whole dynamic of the conference. So interesting team to watch.
Yeah, they have a lot of big-time games, and that's the point why I was researching as well. And you're probably seeing 6 wins, and you're like, how? But their schedule is brutal. They got thrown into the wolves here. Their schedule is so tough. The only question with them is in the trenches too. So can their trenches hold up for an entire season now, going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, which is a little more physical and stuff. So I do like USC too. I would love, there's some teams in college football this year that I love and I think they'd be great, but the schedule is just going to make them look a lot worse. So schedule is a big thing when you're projecting the full season, or some win totals that we'll get to at the end. But I do like USC. I actually like their quarterback this year. He played great in the bowl game, won some money on him over LSU. It's not going to be it's going to sound crazy, but it's not a huge drop off from Caleb Williams. I think Caleb was a lot of improvising a lot last year, made some mistakes on his own. So this guy will play, Miller Moss will play more in the system. He'll, get the ball out where it needs to go. Won't be, running around for his life. The O-line should be a little bit better. The weapons are better. The defense, the coaching staff got improved a lot. They actually got the DC from UCLA, who they had a top 15 defense last year. So I think they'll be coached a lot better. And he did coach in the bowl game, actually, and they looked a lot better. They were tackling better. They were pursuing a little bit better. So I'm with you. I think USC is going to be a lot better, but I just don't know if their record's going to show it. But they should have some big primetime games with the heavy schedule that they have to play.
Yeah, no, for sure. Another really quick surprise team I have is Nebraska. And I know everybody, says the same thing about Nebraska every year, and they just seem not to be able to get over the hump and go back to how they used to play. But I just pulled up their schedule really quick. I mean, keep in mind, this is a better Nebraska. You're bringing in that quarterback that everybody's comparing to Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not saying anything, is going to work out. But listen to this. They start with UTEP. Then they have Colorado home. Then they have Northern Iowa home. Then they have Illinois home. Then they're at Purdue. And then they have Rutgers home. I mean, I feel like that's automatic. Should be 6-0 for most teams.
I agree.
And then you're at Indiana. So 7-0. And look, they might slip up, but you could theoretically, they should be the favorite in each of those 7 games by close to at least a touchdown in each of those 7 games. And then you're at Ohio State October 26th. But there's a chance that Nebraska and Ohio State are both like 7-0 in late October. Nebraska might be, ranked like number 8 in the country at that point. And they might still be a bad team. But the way that, like you said about schedules, I don't know. I love the way that's shaping up for them.
Yeah, some of these conferences, some guys, some teams got some real easy schedules, and then some teams got screwed and got like 8 tough weeks back to back to back. So I'm with you with Nebraska. I think they could do it. Their schedule's manageable. It's kind of like a Big Ten West schedule that they're used to, playing some of those bottom feeders. But I do think it's a different program. They were bad with turnovers last year. They lost so many one-score games. Like I think there was something they lost like 3 points total, or like 4 points total in 3 games. Like it was just some insane bad luck. And usually in the betting sphere, you see that year over year, it does change. So if you had a lot of bad luck the one year and you lost a lot of bounces didn't go your way, it should change the next year. I do like Matt Rule. I think he's better suited for college than the NFL. And usually his programs at Temple and Baylor popped in that second year. So it does take time in college football. It's hard to just do it in that first year and get everybody on the same page. Definitely got a nice little recruiting class, got his players. The defense should be solid. But I'm with you. I think Nebraska could be a sleeper team, and people just kind of write them off because they've been so terrible under Scott Frost the last couple of years. And they had some terrible quarterback play last year. So now you get a 5-star kid, Dylan Raiola, coming in. I think it could be a big turn of the page for Nebraska. They should start off good, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah. Who are you down with this year in the Big Ten?
I'm gonna go with Wisconsin. I think they were good in the past. They have a good program, but I just don't like the trajectory of this program. I think last year was a tough program. Everyone kind of forgot about them, and they didn't do much to improve. They're running a weird air raid with the offensive coordinator from North Carolina with Drake May, which worked down there because he's a very good quarterback. But now they got Tyler Van Dyke from Miami. I'm not a huge fan of him. They're trying to play this system of an air raid or a fast up tempo, but they still have their slower, more physical guys that they've had at the program in Wisconsin. So early on, it's been a struggle. The defense is going to take a step back, but I just don't like Wisconsin for this year and maybe the next little bit. I did like Luke Fickle at Cincinnati, but I'm just not getting his hires. I'm not getting the style of play. I think they should go back to the I formation, running up the middle, power football. I think that's when they're at their best, but they're trying to like do a whole program, reinvent themselves, and I don't think it's working this year. Their schedule, if you look that up, it is tough. It is tough. They have a couple cupcakes early, but then you hit Alabama in that third game, I think, or fourth game, and it gets
week 3
the rest of the season.
They have Alabama home, which they're going to lose by 20 or 30. I don't care. And then they go at USC the week after, which, I mean, they're going to Southern Cal is not a fun, that's not going to be fun.
Right.
That early in the season. I mean, that's a lot. That's a new Big Ten foe. You're traveling, across the country and a hostile territory. I mean, that's
if
tough.
USC came to Wisconsin in November, that'd be a difference.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And it will happen. That will happen. I mean, I guess actually quickly too, because we don't really have time for it. But that's going to be fun to see. Is when we have to see like USC and UCLA go to Iowa and go to Minnesota and go to these in Wisconsin. I mean, it will be a cool like new part of the conference that we've never seen before.
Right. But yeah, I'm selling Wisconsin. I'm just not buying their stock. And then Michigan would just be the other one. We touched on it. They just lost a bunch of people. They're going to be so different. They literally lost so many people, lost the head coach. I don't even know if they have a quarterback that could throw the forward pass. They're going to be running it. But their defense is going to be probably top 5 in the country. So bet a lot of unders. But I'm also selling Michigan too.
Are they going to vacate that win, Mr. Paisley?
It's like they might do it. Maybe it might take 10 years until they get this process.
Right. Well, they should. They should. We have no room for cheating in the college football.
No.
Yeah, Michigan's going to be terrible. I'm with you there. I think very disappointing. Good for them. And that national title will be vacated. Can't wait. I'm low on Washington this year. The expectations aren't very high, but I still think it's going to be disappointing. It might be only disappointing for Washington fans because I think kind of the rest of the country is in agreement that they're not going to be a very good team. But I don't know. I was looking at their schedule, and it is just tough. You have Michigan. You have to go to Iowa. You have to go to Penn State. You have to go to Oregon. They're all, probably going to be the underdog in all those games. And coming off of a college football national championship game, in the game, or at least in the first half, really deep into the third quarter before it got away with them. They beat Texas. I just feel like we are going to see a clear drop-off this year, similar to TCU 2 years ago. But I just think, Washington's years of glory are over, especially going now to the Big Ten and having to play, Michigan, Penn State this year, Penn State on the road. So tough kind of draw for them.
It's a good comparison to TCU. I mean, people forgot about them last year. They fell off a cliff. Like, I don't know if Washington will be that far, but I think Washington returns 2 starters out of 22 from last year's team. So they're even more than Michigan or some of these other teams. But I think a lot of these teams, if you're doing some research, doing some reading, they might say, like, oh, it's year 0. Like, I think Washington's in a year 0 where it's a complete rebuild, whole new coaching staff, got to get your players recruited. So it's not even they're like even farther behind than like a year 1. So I think it's going to take some time. Maybe they'll play better at the end of the year because those teams just got to gel a little bit more, get a little more familiarity. But I agree with you. I think the schedule's tough early on. It's going to be tough sledding for Washington.
I guess we could jump to the ACC. We're about 30 minutes in, so we're doing okay. Keep it under an hour here. ACC weird conference. I never thought I would see Cal in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I mean, try explaining that to kids now growing up.
And
I mean,
Stanford.
And Stanford. I mean, it's just Cal's even easier because it's California, but yes, Stanford. I mean, come on, this conference is ridiculous. SMU. I mean, good for SMU. I mean, playing in a power conference. I actually like SMU, but this just what an interesting conference. You have Florida State at the top, and Clemson and Miami are kind of the betting favorites this year. It will be interesting though, because a lot of people are high on some of those teams, and a lot of people are really low. You know, how will Dabo now continue to adjust to NIL after their dynasty is kind of coming to a close? How will Florida State rebound from being unbeaten, missing out on the playoff, new quarterback, fixing a lot of roster spots that they lost as well from last year. Kind of strange. I guess I'll just kick it to you, kind of your initial thoughts, and then we'll kind of get into who we think's gonna, battle it out and win that conference.
Yeah, I think the ACC and Big 12 are kind of similar, where it's not really top heavy. There's a ton of teams that can win this conference. I think you're talking 5, 6, maybe 7, probably even more in the Big 12 when we'll get there. But yeah, no clear cut number 1. A couple teams at the top: FSU, Miami, Clemson. Definitely the Blue Bloods have been there a lot, dominating the conference, but not as good as they've been in years past. Miami always getting the hype, so you never know what you're getting with them. But yeah, I think a couple teams that could surprise some people. Newcomer SMU, I really like them. They could be a good team, and watch out for Virginia Tech. We could dive into those a little bit deeper. But a lot of teams to win this conference are going to be really competitive games. The top half is kind of closer to the bottom half, not like the Big 10 or SEC. So this conference is wide open.
Yeah, totally agree. I guess I'll start with kind of my disappointing team. It's Miami, and it's really Miami just because the expectations are so high, and it's like everybody's talking about Miami. The way that, and we'll get to this too, I guess, when we get to college football playoff, but the way it's going to be is whoever wins this conference is probably going to be the number 3 seed. Like, that's crazy to me, and it's crazy to me that Miami's could be number 3. I mean, I guess they could be, but I've still never gotten over Mario Cristobal's running the ball against Georgia Tech last year and fumbling it and that whole thing. I think he probably should have been fired after that, in my opinion. He might be a decent coach, but I mean, that's just inexcusable. So I think I'm against Miami this year. And once again, I do think they'll be a pretty good team. They're going to be in the fight. They might be 5, 6, 7-0, but I think they'll lose a couple at the end of the year. I don't think they're going to make the playoff. I think they'll slip up somewhere. They seem to always do. I think that one year, it was like, it's like been 5 years, but they were undefeated playing Notre Dame. They blew out Notre Dame. They were ranked like number 2 in the country. Everybody said the U is back. And then they ended up losing their last 2 games to like Pittsburgh and some other terrible team, maybe Clemson and Pittsburgh. I don't know, but they finished 10-2 and, didn't do anything. I think probably lost their bowl game too. So I think the expectations are just a little too high for Miami for me.
I agree again. I mean, not a lot of controversy on this podcast. No Purdue basketball, the edition. But I agree with you. I'm down on Miami. I'm not a Mario Cristobal fan. Apparently, too, he did that same thing at Oregon. Somebody said they didn't run. They ran the ball, didn't take a knee. So this was his second offense of doing this. So I'm with you. He should have been fired on the spot after that game. But I'm not a big fan of him. The culture is just weird down there. They get a lot of these high talented players, but then now they're all leaving. Now some of them are staying. They're not really producing on the field. So they have a lot of flashy names with Cam Ward at running back, Martinez at Ward at quarterback from Washington State, Martinez at running back from Oregon State, some highly great players from the former Pac-12. But can it work? I don't trust him as an X's and O's guy. He's a good recruiter. They spend a ton of money, so they're getting whatever players they want. But I'm not seeing it on the field with Miami. I'm with you, Case. I'm selling them until I see it with them, until I see them win a big time game again. The U is not back for me.
Totally agree. Do you have anybody else you're lower on in the ACC this year?
Just quickly, I have Pitt. I don't know what they're doing. They're a mess. They actually had a nice little run with Kenny Pickett that year, but since then, oh my God, they are falling off a cliff. I was in person actually at the Notre Dame Pitt game last year, and Notre Dame won by 50. Like I don't know what they're doing on the offense. They brought a new offensive coordinator now. Their defense used to be the staple, but it's not anymore. I think Pitt is one of those programs that actually had a nice trajectory the last couple of years, but something happened. Narduzzi's losing his mind. I think that could be a downward spiral for the Pitt Panthers this year in the ACC.
No, I totally agree. I just kind of wanted to hear you say it. I don't like Pittsburgh either. I think they'll have a down year. I don't like Narduzzi either. I don't think he's a great coach. We'll see how much longer he's around there, but I feel like the timer's certainly ticking there.
Yeah.
Let's see. My surprise teams. I kind of like North Carolina State, and I think they have a real chance to get into the ACC championship game and maybe win it. I mean, if they get there and just get one win over whoever that one seed is, Florida State, Clemson, won't be Miami, but Miami. If NC State could get there, they have a real chance at getting the playoff. And I'm just looking now; they're projected like an 8-4 team. They're kind of right behind. They're kind of that tier 2 in the ACC. And I just think they're going to surprise people. I think they're going to win a lot of games and have a real chance to squeeze into the playoff. Even if they don't win the ACC, they probably get 2 teams in with the way this new format is. If you could just be runner up and stick around, 10-2 in the ACC, I think you have a real chance to get in, and I think that would be huge for NC State.
Yeah, I know. I my championship's FSU over North Carolina State in the ACC, so I'm with you too. I think they're going to be a lot better than last year, and they still had a decent season last year. They had no weapons, but now they upgraded around the quarterback. They got a new quarterback who I think is an upgrade from Brendan Armstrong last year. It's McCall from Coastal Carolina. If you like watching the small schools, he had a nice 3 or 4 year career. Coastal Carolina comes in. The defense is always really good. They got a really good defensive coordinator. It's very underrated. They play like a weird 3-3-5, so they give a lot of weird looks that you don't see every week. So I think this could be the team that takes that next step. I'd be fully comfortable in saying they could be a contender in the ACC.
Yeah. And then Virginia Tech too, quickly. I know a lot of people are kind of high on them. And I know we talked about it too off the podcast the other day about Virginia Tech, but it's just such another interesting team just because the way the schedule shapes up and the way that tier 2 level is. If they could just squeeze past like a Miami, VT is right behind them, kind of similar with NC State, and can find themselves in a, close to that playoff if they can stick around 9, maybe 10 wins. I know that's probably a little too high, but they're only, 1 or 2 games back from really having a monumental season.
Yeah, I think their win total was 8 or 8.5. I was looking in the offseason. I'm like, how is it this high? And then you dive in a little deeper, and it's like the schedule is very favorable. That's a good start. Their offense is very good, but the quarterback's the only question. He just has a little trouble throwing the ball. He's a good runner, big kid. But so if he could throw the ball, this offense could take another step. And their defense has been good the last couple of years. Have a defensive head coach, so they're going to be short up on that side of the ball. So I think everyone wants to see Virginia Tech be good, get back to some of the glory days of Mike Vick, or even a couple of years ago, 5-10 years ago. But I think this could be the year. They also have a lot of hype the last couple of years and didn't live up to it. But I think Virginia Tech could be a sneaky, really good team this year in the ACC.
Yeah, I've always liked VT. I'd like to see them get a little bit better as well. And then really quick on the ACC before we jump to final conference, the Big 12. How hot is the hot seat for Dabo Swinney this year? If Clemson doesn't get it done, if Clemson continue, if they go 8-4 and they're Sweeney's refusing to adapt to NIL, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure for Clemson to win the ACC or at least make the playoff. Because if they don't make a 12-team playoff, I mean, that's going to be, I don't know. I don't know how those fans are going to react. It's been a long time since they've been consistent losers.
Yeah, I mean, he's been causing a lot of drama himself too. So he's putting a lot on his plate, calling out the reporter and that weird thing last year when they lost. So I think the seat's pretty hot. I mean, you said it. They haven't been consistently elite like they've been in the past with Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, some of those guys. So they missed the playoffs the last 4 years. I saw it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, that's true. They haven't been in the playoffs 4 years. I think they have a solid team this year, but I just don't like Cade Klubnik. I don't think he's that good. So if your quarterback's not that good, it's hard to be elite in this day and age in football. So I'm with you. I think Dabo's had a lot of animosity going on in the media there. I think he's causing a little tension, not adapting the transfer portal. 0 people in the transfer portal. Him and the service academies were the only people that didn't take anybody in the transfer portal. So just mind-boggling what he's doing. So I think he's definitely could be on the hot seat if they have another very mid 7-5, 8-4 year.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I'm totally in agreement there. Clemson. Wish them all the best. Anyway, Big 12, I guess, final kind of Power 4 conference. Quickly, another obviously realignment has affected the Big 12 too. We got Utah. We have Colorado now coming back to the Big 12. We got BYU. We got Houston. We have UCF, another interesting team. I guess they've been in now for a year, Central Florida. But yeah, interesting conference, kind of the most wide open of all of them. That's why I figured we'd talk about them last. I don't think there's many experts in agreement there. It's not like, the Big Ten with Oregon, Ohio State, and the SEC with, Texas and Georgia and Alabama. Kind of want to get your thoughts of the Big 12 this year.
Yeah, I think you said it. Very, very wide open conference. Not as deep as an SEC, but a lot of quality teams that are going to be competing week in and week out, and a lot of close games. This might be the most fun conference to watch because of how many teams could win it all. But I think Utah is definitely the betting favorite. I think they're deservingly so. Newcomers coming in, but I think they get Cam Rising back at QB. But I think Utah is definitely the favorite, but a lot of teams right behind them that could close the gap.
Yeah. And according to the ESPN FPI too, a little bit different, I know, than betting. Kansas has the 17% best chance to win. Kansas State right there, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Utah, Texas Tech, TCU, UCF. They're all above 7% chance. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Half the conference has like a good chance to win. Even West Virginia is like right behind them. So interesting there. I think you're right about Utah. I think they're definitely, the clear-cut betting favorite. I think they'll be in that conference championship just because it's kind of hard. I could get away with picking one team that I think might squeeze in, but it's hard to just go with 2 of the middle pack. So I'm rolling with Utah versus Arizona. I think Arizona is going to have a really good year. They were a surprise team last year, and I just think they're going to continue to ride that momentum. And, I think they're going to have a chance to win it. It's just a wide open conference. You don't have to get through Texas. You don't have to get through Oklahoma. And the mid-pack is doable. I don't think they're an elite team by any means, but I think they have a chance to win it.
Yeah, this might be the first time we disagree on this podcast so far, but I'm actually not. Arizona. We made it far. Made it
pretty far.
But I thought they caught a little lightning in a bottle last year. I liked betting on them. They were one of the best against the spread teams last year, but they just lose too much. I really like their head coach that they had last year, but now he's actually at Washington, Jed Fish. So now they got to break in a new head coach. But I'm not as high in Arizona. I think now they got to play a little bit tougher schedule in the Big 12 this year. I like their quarterback. The receiver is probably going to be a top 15 pick in the NFL. But besides that, they really lack a lot. But I would be selling Arizona a little bit. But that's the first we disagree so far here.
Unbelievable. Who's your surprise team?
Yeah, I got 2. I got UCF and Iowa State. I'll start with UCF quick, but Gus Malzahn from the Auburn days, the head coach at UCF there. They got KJ Jefferson from Arkansas, who he described as close to Cam Newton as he's had since Cam Newton. He's a big kid, big runner, has a huge arm. So I think it's going to be fun to see him. They didn't really utilize him the way they should at Arkansas, so people are a little bit down on him. They got 2 really good running backs. The offense is going to be one of the best in the country, I think, honestly. But the only part they lack is the defense a little bit. They actually got some guys in the transfer portal to shore it up a little bit. Had a little trouble stopping the run, but I think this offense is going to be electric, really fun to watch with the play design, with KJ Jefferson at quarterback. If the defense could hold up a little bit, I actually have them in the Pac-12 Championship game as my prediction. You have Utah over UCF, but I'm really high on UCF this year. I think if the defense could hold up their end of the bargain, could be really good. And I have a little bit on Iowa State. I think they're going to be a team that is also ascending. Their arrows pointing up. Got a good quarterback. The coach has been there a little bit, have some coaching continuity. Their defense always plays good. So I'm a little bit higher on Iowa State. I think they could be that like third or fourth team and maybe sneak into the championship game.
Imagine 5 years ago saying that the Big 12 championship would be Utah over Central Florida. A weird time. I do like UCF. I think they could be an interesting team to watch, and as they've been dominant in the group of five, and now actually with Gus Malzahn there, I think it's going to be fun to watch. I'm a little high on West Virginia this year, and might be part of me hedging my bets with Penn State going there week one. But I do think they're a good team. I think they bring back a lot of players from last year. They weren't a bad team last year. I think they won like 8 games, 8-4, and they were only supposed to win, like 6 or 5. I don't even know, but they wanted to get rid of their head coach. They have one good year, and now all of a sudden, West Virginia is on some people's radar. The one thing kind of going against the win is they do kind of have a tough schedule. I actually just pulled it up. They have Kansas home. They have to go to Oklahoma State. They have Kansas State home. They go to Arizona. And obviously then they have Penn State home. So I guess, the train could fall off the tracks pretty quickly if they can't figure it out. But I don't know. I just think they're a decent team. And if they did pull off the upset week one, I think that'll probably put them right in the top 25, and I think their odds would just shoot off the board, largely because it is just a toss-up conference. And, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, they do play those teams, but I don't think they're that, I think they're in the same scale, the same tier as them. I think they're good enough, and if a couple things also just go their way, they could be an absolute shocker if they, made it to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, like you said, they won 8 games. They played really good at the end of the year. They got better as the year went on, which is what you want to see from a team. So I think they'll use that momentum a little bit this year. But I actually group them similar to USC. Like, I love the team, but their schedule's so tough, like you said. So I don't know if they're going to be able to show it to the world, but they do have a lot of talent. So they're going to get tested. But I think they are a very, very good team in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah. Who's your if you had to put disappointing team in the Big 12, who would it be?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Baylor. I mean, they've been down last year. They had a terrible year, but I think this could be, a very, very bad year for Baylor. The coach is definitely on the hot seat. He might get fired midseason. Dave Aranda, some weird stuff going on in the program. Booster's not happy with him. They canceled their spring game like the day before. Like, just some weird off-the-field stuff going on. So the team's not good on the field. Their quarterback's probably going to be from Toledo, who wasn't that great even last year in the MAC. So offense is going to be tough. He's taken over the defensive play calling, which is his calling card, but there's not much to work with on the defense. But I think Baylor was a team with RG3 and even Matt Rule was there and Bryce Petty. Like, they had some nice teams and they were like a top 15, top 20 team, but this team is bottoming out. I don't know what's going on in Baylor, but I could see them definitely at the bottom of the Big 12.
Yeah, totally agree there. And I think they are, like, their over-under win total is like 4.5, and it's just a couple of their non-con games. Interesting fact about Baylor, though, this year, there's a couple Big 12 games that I guess were scheduled before the conference realigned, and one of them is Baylor, Utah, and some of I guess that those games don't actually count towards your conference record. They only count against your regular season, which I guess won't change too much, but just interesting. I was reading a little bit about that today. Right. Let's see. My disappointing team, just because nobody said it yet, I will. Colorado. I think, once again, everybody loves Colorado for some reason. I don't know. Maybe people are actually turning on them more now, about time. But I just don't think it's going to work. I don't think Deion Sanders is going to work. I think they have a brutal schedule. I mean, I'm looking now. They have Utah. They go to Nebraska, loss. They have Kansas State, loss. They go to Arizona, loss. Oklahoma State, loss. They go to Kansas, loss. I think they could, be a 4-win team. And maybe, when you look at the Vegas betting and it's like 6 wins, it might be, well, how could you say they're a disappointment if they get to 4 or 5? I just think it's because of the media and the way that they're hyped up. And I just don't think they're a good team. I don't think they're a contender in the Big 12. And I think if Sanders, goes another 4-8 season, or even worse, I don't think it'll be worse, but let's say 4-8, I think, he's going to be on the hot seat, and I just think it's not going to work out for them.
Yeah, I mean, he might be jumping ship this year regardless because his kids are leaving. So I don't know what he's doing, what's going on with him, the program. I'm with you. I'm a big sell in Colorado. I was one of the big sellers last year. I think it's going to be very similar to this year. They're going to start off, okay early because they just don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of, too deep. The coaching staff really is just not great, so they can hide some stuff early. But then once you get into conference play, It's going to be a different story. So I did it last year, and I'm actually going to look to do it this year again. We can talk about it once we get into the week 2, week 3 podcast. But I bet Colorado under win total, a live win total, as you say, like in the season. I think it was after week 3 or 4, after they started 3-0, and the win total juiced up to like 8.5 or 7.5, and I bet the under, and then they won 2 games, I think, the rest of the year. So I think it could be similar this year, where maybe don't play the over/under win total now. They should win against North Dakota State that first game, and then should be closer. But I think they should at least win it, maybe not cover the spread. And then maybe after that week 1 game, look to maybe the win total jumps up 1. You could get a little boost, and then I would go under the win total there. But I think there's too much noise and perception. I think Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback, but he's going to get killed again this year because they have no offensive line. They can't run the ball. The defense is not good. But I'm with you. Now they got to play a Big 12 schedule, instead of a Pac-12 schedule. So I think it's going to be a tough sledding for Colorado.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more there. Anything else on any of the Power 4, I guess, before we kind of pivot here?
I guess I'll touch on Notre Dame.
I was just going to shift there. Yeah.
Yeah, just very, very briefly. But I think in years past, I think they're another team with a lot of hype, as we know, that usually gets a lot of media attention, a lot of hype. And they fell a little flat some years. But I think this year could be different. I think their schedule's actually easier than it's been. It's one of the easier schedules with a tough game at Texas A&M to open up. If they could get past that game, and even if they don't, if they lose that game, I think they could run the table and win the other 11. So I like a Notre Dame to make the playoff bet. It got juiced up a little bit. I think it's like 160 now, which is a little expensive. But I think they're in another situation like we were talking about some of these teams that kind of are playoff or bust. Like if you don't make the playoff, that means you did something on your end. They're very deep this year, all around quarterback, running back, receiver. Defense should be, I think, a top 5 unit. The offense might take some time to get there, but you have Mike Denbrock from LSU coming back to Notre Dame, who just had produced Jaden Daniels. So Riley Leonard in at quarterback from Duke. So I usually try and be with my teams a little more pessimistic, like you do, I think, with Penn State, because you don't want to get too much into the hype. But this is a year differently that I'm approaching Notre Dame that I think they actually could make some noise. The first game is scaring me to death, but we'll talk about that on the week 1 pod. But if they get past that or look okay, maybe get a close loss, I think the schedule sets up really nicely, though. They should have a nice year. I think 2 losses would be very average, but I'm projecting more in that 1-loss category. I'm Notre Dame.
No, I agree with Notre Dame. I think they will be stealing one of the college football playoff spots for sure, because the way, like you said, their schedule lines up. And, at the end of the day, it's important to have a strong record. And Notre Dame will be respected in the national polls and the voters. And, they have a decent preseason slot right now. So, yeah, if they go 11-1, I mean, they're in. Even 10-2, I mean, that would be questionable, but they might even still squeeze in. If they win, they win that week 1 game. It's huge because that kind of sets the tone. If they could go into College Station and win that game against a ranked Texas A&M, I mean, I think at night, I think that would set the tone. I don't see another loss in their schedule. I'm looking at it here. I mean, Florida State maybe, but I don't know. I'm not high on Florida State. Notre Dame gets them home. You might be, I think very similar, like you said, with me and Penn State. If either of those 2 teams don't make the playoffs, I think something went wrong, because they just, the way the schedules are lining up, and the odds should be Notre Dame should be sitting there at the end of the year with at least no more than 1 loss, and if it is more than 1, maybe squeeze in at 10-2, but obviously 11-1, I would say, is kind of where I think they should be with the way their schedule is.
Yeah, and I think just a quick note, the expanded playoff changes your perception now of some of these teams. So it's not just getting in the top 4. It is tough sometimes to be top 4 team in the country. So now a little more room for error. Not that you could lose 3 or 4 games, but there is a little more room where you could maybe slide in that 11 or 12 spot with 2 losses potentially, or if you play them close and stuff. So it's going to be a lot of chaos at the end of the year. I can't wait to dive into that.
Who's your winner of the Pac-12 Conference Championship? Oregon State versus Washington State. I'm taking Oregon State. They're home. I don't know if you saw that.
Me too. Yeah, I got that, the 1 conference game for the year. Sad for the Pac-12.
Feel horrible of what's going on there. But anyway.
Pac-12 preview. It was nice and quick.
That was quick. I guess lastly, I know we're approaching the hour here. college football playoff, I just have it as a subject here. I don't know. We could just spend a couple minutes on it. You kind of saw where we think teams will be. We kind of picked our conference winners. Obviously, the top 4, each conference winner gets an auto bid, and then I guess it's 5 through 11 are all at large, and then the 12th is the group of 5, the highest ranked group of 5 team. So it's interesting. The 12, which will likely be, well, it could be anybody, but let's say it's a Memphis or a South Florida or a Liberty, will go on the road at number 5. So, I mean, that game's going to be an absolute beatdown, in my opinion, because you might have the SEC runner-up probably, right? Or the loser of Ohio State, Oregon. So I think actually that's probably what it'll be. It'll probably be the loser of Ohio State and Oregon will be number 5, and then Liberty has to go there and then lose by 100. So I don't really love the auto bid of group of 5, but it is interesting, and I don't know. I just wanted to talk about it quick. There might be some good teams. I know we've had Cincinnati in the past before they, were in a major conference, but I don't know. I'd probably roll with South Florida or maybe like a team like Appalachian State to squeeze in there. But it is exciting, and I'm happy though the way it's formatted, just because I could picture, being in December, around Christmas time, going like a Penn State hosting, a Clemson or something in the cold. I think it's going to add a cool aspect of the playoff, and it makes those New Year's 6 games matter again. The Rose, the Sugar, all of them, they'll be playoff games. But no, it'll be fun. This is year 1 of doing it. And quickly back to the group of 5 thing. I guess it's only for 2 years. I saw in 2 years they're going to reevaluate and kind of how they're doing it, and maybe they'll kick them out completely or decide to give them 10 more slots. Who knows? But anyway, that's the playoff. Anything on that, Mr. Paisley?
Yeah, I mean, I think Liberty showed it last year in the bowl game against Oregon. Not a good showing, so that's a little bit in everybody's mind. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm a big fan of the 12 team. I think it just creates more good games for the viewers. A lot more fun matchups, like you said. Some home playoff games I think would be really cool. But yeah, love the group of 5. Don't forget about the little guys. You could really make a little headway in the betting sphere, because everyone's betting these Power 4 games and everything. No one's really touching these Power or group of 5 games. So I would encourage all the bettors out there to take a look at them and maybe, just do a little research on some of those smaller teams, because you can really find some bigger edges than you would like the Ohio State Oregon game that's been being bet for 6 months, and everyone's going to be betting that game. So every bet still counts for the same dollar amount. You still get it back. So just a little tidbit there about the group of 5. But yeah, playoffs going to be awesome this year.
And then I guess quickly before we get to the bets to close out, any kind of dark horse team to make the 12-team playoff, maybe a team that we didn't touch on or a team that we did, but just as a surprise. I don't know where I'm even at. I asked the question. I'm not even sure what I would say. I guess maybe a team like Kansas. I mean, nobody's kind of high on them, but I guess if they could squeeze out, the Big 12, or like be a runner up there. I already mentioned like Arizona. I know some people are on Texas A&M actually. They're a weird team, not just because of how loaded they are. A&M's interesting. Tennessee, the way SEC is, not a lot of people are talking about them, but they're right there. I don't know.
Yeah, Texas A&M, if you look at their schedule, it's actually not terrible. I mean, obviously the tough game against Notre Dame, it's going to be a huge swing game for whoever wins that, like, momentum for their season. But if Texas A&M does win that first game, they have a nice little soft landing, and I think they got Alabama or just like one tough team at the end, and then they play Texas, renewing that rivalry at the last game of the year. But I think you get some good value on Texas A&M to make the college football playoff, because they have the talent to do it. Schedule's not too bad, and they're going to obviously be looked at a lot higher in the SEC. So I think Texas A&M's a really good team. It's kind of in the weeds. They also had a lot of hype, but now kind of fizzled out after the Jimbo Fisher experience. But I kind of like that Texas A&M pick, Case. I'd be with you on that.
All right, cool. Well, I guess just to close out, then we'll go through some bets. Obviously, we have week 0. I guess it's Saturday. We'll probably I guess it'll be Thursday or Friday when we release this. So it's literally right around the corner. I guess quickly I'm going to go through some preseason picks that I have, and we'll put this all, obviously you'll see it here on the page in the tweet. And then we'll kind of get into week 0 really quick. I like Rutgers over the 6 wins. I know that's a lot for them. They got to win. I'm saying then, 7 games or at least break even at 6, but the way their schedule is, it's kind of weaker. I think they could be the favorite in 7 or 8 games this year. So I'm not asking for too much. If they could just win all those games that they could win and should win, Rutgers should be right there. I'm under 10.5 on Texas. I think Texas is really good, but I just 10.5 that means 11-1 in the SEC. And if you haven't noticed, I'm just kind of been a little bit against all of the newcomers of the conferences and the realignment. And I don't know. We'll see if Sarkisian can do it, but they were in the playoff last year. I just think they take a baby step backwards. And then I'm over 9.5 on Alabama for the season. I just think that they're right there. I think they could go 10-2. I just think a lot of people are low on them, and I'd probably be, if they were 10.5, I wouldn't like that, but I think it's still Alabama, and I can't picture them going 9-3. I hope they do. I mean, screw Alabama, but I just think 10 wins is where they'll be at the end of the year.
Yeah, I honestly like all those futures, Case. I'm also in agreement with you there, but I'm going to go for my future picks. I got Wisconsin under 7 wins. There's some 6.5s, but I bumped it up to 7 with a little bit of juice, and we talked about it earlier. I just do not see 7 wins at all. I'm seeing 4 or 5, so under 7 there. I got Utah to make the playoff. The playoff futures are – what's up?
No, I like that. That's a good pick.
Yeah, I think the playoff futures are tough because there's so many teams that are around even money, or like I said, Notre Dame minus 160, like not a ton of value there. But Utah plus 200 stood out to me. It was plus 260 early in the summer, but down to plus 200, I still think there's value there. Like we said, I like them to win the conference. So if you win the conference, you're automatically in. I think even if they don't win the conference, they should only have 1 loss, maybe 2, and then they could sneak in at a 10, 11, or 12 seed. So I think that's a team I located as some good value at plus 200 to make the playoff. And then my last one is Old Dominion, some G5 schools. They're under 4.5 wins, a little low, but doing some research, listening to some other podcasts, doing some reading online, some articles, and did not like what I was seeing out of Old Dominion. I think that was a strong play, and you could still get it at a decent price at 4.5 out of the Sun Belt. So Old Dominion under 4.5.
Wow. That's disappointing for them. I have an Old Dominion source. I'll definitely be reaching out. I didn't know they were supposed to be that bad this year. Disappointing for them. All right. Well, we're here. Week 0 is here around the corner. What are your plays for this Saturday, Mr.
Yeah, I'll do 2 with only 4 games. Still got to find some plays. Nothing huge, no best bet material maybe, but I'm going to go New Mexico plus 11 versus Montana State. Yes, that is right. Montana State FCS is favored by 11 in the market right now. They are very good in the FCS level. Also doing some research. They should be the 2nd or 3rd best team in the FCS, so they are pretty legit. But I think the number's too high. New Mexico is starting over, starting fresh. They're almost in a year 0. The game's at New Mexico too, so it's a home game. I think they just got a little bit bigger guys. They could compete a little bit. I like the coach. It's going to take some time for him to get the program where it needs to be, but I just think the number is a little too far off at plus 11, so I'll dab a little bit there. And then I'm also going to go the Rainbow Warriors. I got Hawaii playing Delaware State. This number is very high. I think it's 39.5 I saw last at a DraftKings.
Yep.
At midnight, last game of the night, Saturday night. Delaware State had some problems flying out there. They missed their flight, and they got there a little late. Some in the weeds research there, but Hawaii's going to be good this year. I think they're going to be around a 6-7 win team this year. Delaware State is another FCS team, but they are one of the worst FCS teams. So huge gap between them and Montana State. So I think Hawaii's going to roll big time. So if you're looking to get some money at midnight plus, I would take Hawaii minus 39.5.
Paisley, I cannot believe you took my pick going with the Rainbow Warriors here. Got my Hawaii hat on. 39.5. I think they're going to beat Delaware State by, 55, 60. I don't know if it'd be that much, but you're right. I think the whole plane thing, it's Delaware State. This isn't Delaware, by the way. This is Delaware State. This is take another 2 inches off these guys' average height, lower them by 20 pounds. This is not a good team. Watch Delaware State's going to win this game now, but I think Hawaii will cover. I picked this because I needed a week 0 play really, and I don't really know about the Florida State, Georgia Tech, and Ireland. Obviously, that's the biggest game. I think the spread's 9.5 or 10 with Florida State. I probably lean Florida State there, but my play is certainly the Rainbow Warriors as well. 39.5 midnight kickoff. Can't wait.
Love it. Let's get that. Hopefully it gets ugly early and we can go to bed at a decent time. And I don't know if it's on TV. I think you might have to get a a package or something weird, so it might be a on the phone following game.
You're actually right. I don't see a televised there. Figure that
Might be
out.
Spectrum, I think I heard, which I don't know, you have to maybe pay for that, but all these streaming services.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're pretty much wrapped up. Just over an hour week or preseason, off-season preview. We kind of shoved a lot of information in this episode. We'll be a little more structured moving forward, but next week we'll have another one coming out that will just be a quick, obviously, week 0 recap, but it'll mainly just be diving into week 1, kind of what we see, some games that we like, some obviously plays that we like, what we're going to be betting. We'll put all the picks on the page. We hope to do this weekly throughout the year, released on Twitter here, either every probably Wednesday or Thursday, just pending the week. And each week will kind of just be, the first half will be a recap of what we saw, and then the last half will be a preview of the upcoming week. So we'll try to get in a little bit of a rhythm. But yeah, very exciting. Anything to close out, Mr. Paisley?
No, I'm just excited, man. Got some real football. No more preseason NFL. We got some real football on the turf. So going to be exciting week 0. And then, we'll be back once a week previewing each week, just getting more into the picks. So it won't be as lengthy as this. So, but I'm excited, Case. Best time of the year, man. Looking forward to it.
All right. Go Hawaii.